Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is save. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might hear the verb save used is to mean to keep safe or to rescue someone or something from a harmful or dangerous situation. I know I've heard this verb used in certain movies or TV shows where, again, someone is rescued from a harmful or dangerous event. And you might have heard people say things like, "You saved my life." A second way to use the verb save is to mean to keep and store up something for future use. And when we think about this second definition, I think many people think of money and the action of keeping money for a later use or a later purchase. A third way you might hear the verb save used is to mean to keep data by storing a copy. So if you're ever performing work on a computer, you're typing a paper, some sort of message, you're collecting data, or you're making a presentation, it's going to be really important you click the save icon or the shortcut key in order to store a copy of your work. A fourth way you might hear the verb save used is to mean to prevent an opponent from scoring in a game or from winning the game. So this definition connects to sports. And when I think of it, my first thought is sports that have a goalie, right? So we might think of hockey or soccer and the action of preventing someone from scoring a goal or scoring a point even, right? You'll also hear this verb used in baseball, and it's used generally when a pitcher is brought in and prevents the other team from scoring or winning the game. Save is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, we're going to drop the E and then add ing to form saving. To make the past tense and participle forms of this verb, I just need to add the letter D. And that's because this verb already ends with an E. When I say the base verb, save, hopefully you're hearing this voiced V sound. Due to that fact, our past tense form is just going to make a D sound. Saved, saved. Now, let's take a look at some phrasal verbs. The first one we'll look at is the phrasal verb save on. Its meaning is to reduce or avoid using something in order to cut costs or reduce costs. Let's take a look at an example sentence. Many people have saved on transportation during the pandemic because they've been working from home. So if you commute to your job, right, there are a lot of expenses. You've got to pay for gas. You might need to get your automobile's oil changed. If you're in a large city, you might be paying tolls on freeways. There can be parking costs, right, et cetera, et cetera. But many people have reduced their transportation costs because they've been working from home. The next phrasal verb we'll take a look at is save up. Okay? And again, this connection really goes back to the second definition we looked at. And the meaning here of save up is to save money for a particular purpose. Let's look at another example sentence. We're saving up to buy a new car. Okay? So saving money for this particular purchase. Now let's continue practicing our verb save, and we'll do it in a few different verb tenses. Today we'll practice the simple present, the present perfect progressive, and the simple future using be going to. Let's start with the simple present. We use this verb tense to talk about habits and routines, actions that sort of repeat on a regular cycle or regular interval. We also use it for facts. So in the affirmative, when I make a sentence in the simple present, I'm going to use the base verb whenever my subject is I, you, we, or they. If my subject is he, she, or it, then I need to add an S to the base verb, and you'll see that in the example here. The goalkeeper saves many difficult shots every game. So again, you might be thinking of soccer as you read this sentence. That's great. And we're talking about a really strong performer who repeats this particular action. If I want to make a negative sentence in the simple present, I'm going to use do not and then the base verb. That will be with the subjects I, you, we, and they. But if my subject is he, she, or it, I'll use does not and the base verb. So there's no S on the verb in the negative. Let's look at another example. Americans don't save enough money for emergencies. Again, this is that idea of storing a particular resource, in this case money, for the future. If I want to ask a yes or no question in the simple present, I'm going to start with do or does, then I'll have my subject, then the base verb. Do you save money from every paycheck? And this question is asking about a habit or a routine action that someone may or may not do. Now let's take a look at the present perfect progressive. Okay? We're using this verb tense to talk about an action that has started in the past and it continues into the present. Many people think of this action as being unfinished. There are instances, though, where people will use the present perfect progressive to talk about something that just recently finished. Okay? To make the present perfect progressive, I need 3 parts. I always like to tell my students 3 P's, 3 parts to help them remember. So the first part will be have or has, depending on what my subject is. Then I'll use been, B-E-E-N. That's the participle form of the be verb. And then we're going to use that ing form of the verb. Let's take a look at an example sentence. Doctors and nurses have been saving countless lives during the pandemic. Okay? So again, this is an action. It has started in the past, and unfortunately, it is unfinished. They are continuing to work so very hard right now to save as many lives as they can. Again, this goes back to that first meaning of trying to get someone out of a harmful or dangerous situation. If I want to make a negative present perfect progressive sentence, I need to insert not after have or has. You may hear native speakers use the contraction form, haven't or hasn't. Let's look at another example. She hasn't been saving money for retirement. Now, if I want to make a yes or no question in the present perfect progressive, I'm going to start with have or has. Then I'll have my subject, and then been, and then the ing form of the verb. Let's look at another example. Have you been saving your work frequently? So someone might ask this question as someone is working on a very important project and they want to make sure they're hitting save periodically so that they don't lose anything if the computer would malfunction and shut down. Now let's take a look at the simple future. Today we're going to use be going to make simple future sentences. The structure for this will change a little bit based on our subject. So our be verb is going to be in the present, so that's am, is, or are. Okay? Let's take a look at an example sentence. Electric cars are going to save thousands of lives and billions of dollars. Okay? So here I'm using are because I'm talking about more than one car, right? And I took this sentence from an article I had been reading, again, in the future when there are more electric cars on the roads than there are today, it will have this impact. Now, if I want to make a negative simple future sentence, I'm going to insert not after my be verb. You might hear native speakers use the contraction forms isn't or aren't, but remember there's no contraction with am. Here's another sentence. He isn't going to save the leftovers. So this would be a crime in my family. We would always save leftover food for the next day. Finally, if I want to make a yes or no question in the simple future using me going to, I'm going to start with my be verb, then I'll have my subject, then going to, and the base verb. Are these decisions going to save lives? Again, this is something I've heard as people debate what we should be doing as a society in terms of protecting people in this time where the pandemic seems to be growing and so many people, unfortunately, are losing their lives. Now, let's take a look at some words that are related to our verb. And the first word we're going to look at has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation as our verb. It's just the noun form. So the noun save could relate back to sports. So in soccer or in hockey, again, this is the action of preventing an opponent from scoring. So let's take a look at this noun usage in an example sentence. The goalie made 25 saves during the game. Having that number right before the noun is a good indication that this is a noun and not a verb. The noun save could also just be the act of saving data. So again, connecting this back to computing or working with computers. I know when I've had an issue and I've talked to an IT professional, I've heard this question: when was your last save? So when is the last time you clicked save on your particular document? Another related word is the noun saver. And it might not surprise you that this, like our verb and the earlier noun form, can have a couple different meanings as well. So the noun saver could be a person who regularly saves money through a bank or some other means. Here's an example of that usage. What's the best account for savers? The other usage of saver could be an object, an action, or a process that prevents a particular kind of resource from being used up. Let's take a look at an example sentence that will help explain this usage. This new kitchen appliance is a great time and space saver. So here, there are two resources that we're talking about. We're talking about time and we're talking about space. So you might imagine some sort of appliance that is trying to be sold to consumers, right? And their pitch is, this is going to save you a lot of time when you're cooking. And maybe it has many different functions. So it replaces a number of different appliances. And so you don't have as many things in your cupboards or on your counter. That's the idea there. It's preventing either time or space from being used up. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great